Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners.
You have an echo there.
Oh,
Issues and updates on May 3rd, 2022. Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. We're going to start today with a Clackamas County Sheriff's Office staffing study. Sheriff Angela Brandenburg will present along with Captain Lee Eby. The study is included in your packet. This is up to an hour today. So the sheriff will present up to around 30 minutes, then have 30 minutes for you to ask questions or comments. So Sheriff and Captain, please go ahead.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
thank you. I'm Sheriff Angela Brandenburg.
I am Captain Lee Eby.
Boy, these are working really good, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Thank you for having us, Chair and Commissioners, and County Administrator Gary Schmidt. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that we'll run through real quick. The staffing study, as I introduce this, I'm going to, whenever you put it up there, it's fine. As an intro, I have just a short statement here. As the newly elected Clackamas County Sheriff in January of 2021, one of my early objectives was to establish a baseline for our staffing needs across the Sheriff's Office to inform current and future delivery of public safety services from Mount Hood to our urban unincorporated communities. In short, I wanted to know not only if our staffing numbers were sufficient to meet our workloads, but also if our assignment of personnel to particular programs was the best use of resources and whether there were efficiencies we could address. For the long term, I want my office to have an analysis of staffing projections to guide future decisions on how to best allocate resources to meet the needs of population growth and the analysis of jail population trends and bed capacity, given our aging Clackamas County Jail built in 1959. With the support and financial partnership of the Clackamas County Administrator, thank you, Administrator Schmidt, for helping us make this staffing study a reality. The Matrix Consulting Group was retained in early 2021 to conduct an analytically based study. Over the course of 9 months, the Matrix Group engaged in objective analysis of workloads, service levels, scheduling and personnel deployment, staffing numbers across our organization, with a primary focus on jail, patrol, and our investigations divisions. Their final report represents this process and presents the results of their analysis, including specific recommendations that demonstrate a need for critical positions and programs for an agency of our size in a growing county. Their staffing recommendations are in alignment with our 2021 voter-approved public safety levy that provides dedicated deputy positions to our jail, patrol, and investigations divisions. The study also affirms the county's need for a new jail facility with a 721 bed capacity to meet daily population detention projections by the year of 2035. So I know that you all have the staffing study. It's 170 some pages. It's very comprehensive. So I'm going to, and that's also posted on the website. I'm going to go through some highlights of our the divisions of our organization here. So I've got the clicker and see if this will work.
Right now?
Okay. Here we go. So this is what I just covered, the baseline. So to take a look at, where we are now, and then what does the future look like, and having some future projections. And what I'm most excited about the staffing study is there are formulas built into this that we can regenerate the information and use this over and over again. I think that an antiquated system of how we decide how many deputies we need for the size of our county used to be a measurement of, and you've heard this before, we've talked about this, is 1 deputy per 1,000. That is an antiquated way of doing things. Really is to taking a deep dive into our data to decide to show a proactive rate of our deputies, say for patrol, is a much better measurement. And there's a formula that's in here that we can regenerate as time goes by. And then I'll go through here. It shows you what it is, and then we can have some questions afterwards. So the scope of the staffing study, I'm not going to read through all of these things, but really looking at industry best practices. And they took a look at all of our divisions and programs. It's all in the staffing study. And then we did a measurement of employee engagement, which I'll touch on here. And then looking really at our future staffing needs. I know we talked about what is the right size of public safety in Clackamas County. This will help answer, I think, some of those questions for us. I think the long and short of this is that in a perfect world, I would have had the staffing study before we asked the voters to fund our public safety levy and ask for that increase. This will show you that it really is in alignment with our ask and where we are going to be placing personnel. So that's the good news. And then looking at our future bed jail capacity, the study, I think, says in here that since the year 2000, the jail has not been meeting the needs of our community. So, and we have to make, recommendations about who we hold and who we release early into the community. So we're looking at all these recommendations. Not every recommendation will be implemented. One, we may not have the funding for it. Two, we may have already done something differently that the study has not taken into account. And then we used 2019 data. We did not want to use the 2020 pandemic influenced data. So unless it's specifically stated in the study, this is 2019 data. All the data that's in here is not national best practice or guesses or estimates from across the United States. All the data is specific to our agency. We spent about 6 weeks in the very beginning of this pulling data, CAD data, time off data, all the data that they used in this study is our specific data, which is super helpful for us to give you a perspective. Matrix Consulting Group, just to touch on those folks, they've been doing these studies for many, many years. They specialize in sheriff's offices, so they have quite a bit of experience under their belt. So we started off with employee engagement in the very beginning, and mind you, this is we had just taken over as the newly elected sheriff, but our employee engagement was super high. 65% response rate was fantastic, and employees, the full engagement is in the study, but really it was staffing levels, which remain a concern, and then the jail facilities are inadequate. But positively, our people view that how we run our operations is pretty good, and then that we believe, and I know my staff believes, that we provide a high level of service to our community. And that we're meeting the needs of our community, and we're heading in the right direction. And I think the reason that we passed the levy with a 55% approval rate was because we provide a high level of service, and we work really hard with what we have to do that. So, and it's thanks to, and as I tell our line staff when I rolled this staffing study out to them, is that it's because of their good work that we passed this levy. So quickly, this is what I'm telling you as far as taking a look at how we can figure out and use this for future staffing projections. This formula is based on calls for service, which is the workload hours, and then how much time a person that works patrol, this is for patrol, has the availability to handle these calls for service. So we have these minus factors of administrative leave time, people get time off, they're in court, these different things. But the remaining time is the time that a patrol deputy has to be proactive. And proactive means not responding to calls for service. They can do traffic stops, they can drive through your neighborhood, they can do community events. And so this is the formula. I'm just going to go through it really quickly. These are the net hours. That's our data. So on average, this is what we have to work with. About 1,400 hours for each deputy on patrol has available to respond to calls. And this is the workload factor. So these are the calls for service in 2019 for the unincorporated areas, a little over 51,000 calls for service. This does not include our calls that come into our community service officers, which that section is also broken out into our staffing study, which shows that in 2019 they did 17,000 calls for service. And the recommendation of the staffing of Matrix is that that's a wonderful service that we have, that folks can call and talk to somebody and not wait for a patrol deputy to respond. It also lightens the load for the patrol deputies so they can be proactive. And so certainly our CSOs are a fantastic complement to our patrol division. And I know that we've talked about CSOs and the work that they do. So Happy Valley and Wilsonville also are included in this study, which is great for us to kind of compare the level of service that our cities, they pay for the deputies to be in our contract cities of Happy Valley and Wilsonville. So here is the proactivity level, which is kind of the meat and the potatoes of what we should be looking for about how we want our patrol to be out in our community doing proactive work. 38.9 is the rate in 2019 that Matrix calculated. In Happy Valley and Wilsonville, 70% of the time, the deputies were free to do traffic stops, to do community events, to go down, drive down people's proactive neighborhoods. So there is the difference of service, and I've personally worked in the contract cities, and that's absolutely true. So it's really, when you go and work those cities, you do have that time to make the connection with the community, rather than just going from call to call to call, which I know that's what our community would love us to do, is to make more connections with our community. So proactivity level, 40% is what Matrix calculates as kind of a best practice, is where we should at least be for our patrol folks. I'll touch on that in just a minute. This is a slide that I cut out of here because that really shows you that, during the days, so even though we have an overall proactivity rate of 39%, a lot of that's being done during the nighttime hours. There's less calls for service. There's more proactive time for our nighttime deputies. So they are out in the neighborhoods. People probably don't see them because they're sleeping, but we are, because we're not responding from call to call to call. But when things go bad at night, they really go bad. And so one of Matrix's recommendations is that we take some of our staff from nights and put them on day shift to handle those day shift call loads. The problem with that is that if you have an event like the town center shooting, that's during the day. The entire Brooks building will be cleared out to respond to that call. So there's a lot of support during the day for our day shift folks, but at nighttime when things go bad, they only have a finite number of deputies to handle those calls, and it's not safe. And so I disagree with the recommendation of Matrix on this, but this will inform us about where we turn our staff out to. Our new staff that we're training up now is to infuse some of those positions onto our day shift hours to balance out. In the study, you'll see that Happy Valley and in Wilsonville, you see a lot of green. So we're looking for green on these slides. So this will definitely we'll use this to inform how we assign our resources on patrol. So coming back to the proactivity level and what Matrix says is kind of the sweet spot, 35, 45%, 45, 50%. So you can get different levels of, if you have folks who are out responding to calls, more deputies, more people on patrol, kind of comes back to our strategic business plan and the managing for results. The more you put your resources in certain places, you're gonna have a higher level of proactivity. And I would love for I think our community expects that we would be at 50% at the very least and not at 40%. So what Matrix says is that we need about 67 patrol units out to be at our 40% level. There's a 10%, like a 9, I think we kind of run about a 10% rate where we have folks who are not deployable due to certain things, injuries, family medical leave, military leave. So currently, our staffing, we have 70 authorized patrol deputies for patrol. And this number, the deployed number and undeployable, changed a little bit because of an injury. So we have 62 that are deployed and 8 are undeployable, and that number fluctuates. But you'll see the numbers here is what do we need to get to those numbers, that spot, that 50%, which is 81 deputies. Fortunately for us, the levy funding will be bringing us some relief in this respect. We're adding 16 dedicated patrol deputy full-time employees to patrol, which will bring us up to a authorized patrol staffing of 86. So I put this in here to show, coming back to our strategic business plan and how we want to be able to respond to especially priority calls for service. Priority 1 being it's really bad and they need somebody there like yesterday, is the more deputies we put into the field, the quicker our response times will be, and these numbers will change as we do that, and we infuse patrol with more bodies. on patrol. So the flatter these are, the longer calls are waiting for service. You'll see peaks once we have a better level of staffing. So quickly in investigations, this is the same formula, 1,253 hours available for our detectives. So our homicide and violent crime unit, it says that we should have 6 in that unit. We are just shy, these are different slides that I'm used to, but we are shy by 1 person on this one. And I talk about these slides here because these are where our dedicated levy funding are also infusing bodies into. So we know child abuse team, which was one of the more interesting things for me to realize is that how busy this unit is. This is the busiest detective unit that we have. Matrix, as they looked at our numbers, and this is all of our data, they say we need 10 detectives assigned.
In this child abuse team?
In child abuse team. We currently have 6 detectives assigned. The caseload is high. It's stressful work. Our detectives carry a very high caseload here. And so this is one of the more, I think, revealing pieces of information that I see coming out of Matrix here. But if you talk to the folks who work child abuse, they know it. The sergeant who works there, they know it. So they're recommending an additional sergeant and 4 more detectives to bring that up to 10 detectives. Adult sex crimes unit, so this is the unit that is stationed at the Family Justice Center. When I became undersheriff, looking at our caseloads, so the major crimes team carried a mixture of major cases and then also sexual assault cases. This is the time where we had a backlog of rape kits. And so when there was a major incident that would happen, the detectives would have to go, like an officer-involved shooting or something like that. They would have to concentrate on those cases. So we were not doing a service to our sexual assault cases and our survivors of sexual assault. So I carved out this detective unit, which has been hugely successful, and we are really, I think, appropriately responding to investigate those serious cases. And putting them at the Family Justice Center where their support for our survivors has been awesome. So Matrix says that we should have 5 detectives assigned to this unit, and I believe that is for sure true. The property crimes unit, so this was an interesting wrestling with Matrix over really we're not happy with what they think that we should have for our property crimes detectives. 1.66 property crimes detectives is what they say we need. What they don't factor in here is that the cases that these 2 property detectives that we have currently, sure, they can handle a caseload of 62. However, they don't look at all the cases that go back to patrol, that are detective level cases, but we want them investigated. So the patrol deputy has to take that as a follow-up, which also prevents them from being proactive. So the less detectives that we have to assign these detective level cases, the more is put on patrol. They can't be out doing the proactive things. So really having our investigations units staffed up will help that bottom line number with patrol. That makes sense. So in a shortcut, this is the recommendations for investigations. And some of this is in alignment with our levy funding, which I have here. They have some other recommendations, non-sworn investigative analyst to support detectives, a crime scene investigator. We have 2 crime scene investigators now that go out on all the major incidents. And then our staffing for the interagency drug task force that we have, because it's a proactive unit, they don't have recommendations about adding. That is a fully funded levy unit, which, as you know, just sees the record, the Oregon's record for fentanyl just earlier in March here in Oregon City. So they're doing great work. They don't make recommendations on that unit because it is a proactive unit. The more people you have, the more you can do. So, and then The jail, fairly quickly here, is a fixed post staffing plan is what we have here at the jail. And there are functions that are required by law. On average, it's 21 day shift posts, 16 night shift posts, although that fluctuates a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the same thing for the jail, the same calculations, about 1,692 hours that we have per deputy that's available to work. Doing the math, they say that it takes 6 deputies to cover a 7-day post. So their recommendation, we have 138 allocated jail operations, sworn and non-sworn currently. And they recommend that we have 107 FTE security staff, which are deputies assigned. And so their recommendation is an additional 17 security staff or deputies to meet the operational needs. In here, they also make a recommendation to open up the mental health medical beds, which will happen with the levy funding. So that's going to give us 6 deputies for the jail. So you can take 6 off that 17 because the levy is going to fund those so we can open up that much needed resource. And then it gets us closer to the number that we need. And those are best practices, national best practice.
Yeah, and the data we gave them for the jail is over a 10-year period. So we did a pretty deep dive into the jail numbers. It wasn't just 2019. We looked over 10 years. And as we're going back now to the space projections for the bed, how many beds we should have, that's what they're based it on, is that 10-year projection going back and then looking forward, as we'll cover right now.
You want to go?
Sure.
This is your.
All right.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the questions that always comes up is obviously the size of our jail, our bed space, is that equivalent to what we should have based on our population and the growth of our population here in Clackamas County over the years. And so based on projections, and the next slide will kind of show what they went all the way out to 2035 and said what is the number of beds that we would need based on our population growth. And they believe we should have a facility of 721 beds. So putting that into kind of contrast, the jail currently at maximum capacity would hold 491. So there's a 230-bed issue there that they're saying by 2035 that we need to be. Now, 2025, just a couple of years from now, they say we should have 658. So again, we are behind the curve on what they think based on our population. Looking at the next, they calculate this using what they call ADP, which is the average daily population in the jail. And like I said, we gave them 10 years of data so they can kind of go through it all and see what the trends were. Obviously, 2020, we saw a reduction because of COVID and certain restrictions we put on bringing people in. But if they look back on all what we saw historically, and as you can see in the red, what they project as we're moving forward, they think by 2035 we should have an average daily population of around 600 people coming or staying in our jail at that time. Currently, 2019 time, we saw an average daily population of about 490 to 500. So again, they're talking about 100 more people a day potentially coming in and out of our jail. Currently, because our population bed space is not equivalent to what we have to do what we call forced releases, which we've obviously talked about before, where we have to kick people out because we do not have the space legally to hold them. And so that's an ongoing issue. But as you can see from their projections, they really did look at a deep dive of our numbers in the jail to really say this is exactly what we need. Thus, going back to the 721, which 21, why 21? But again, they use the numbers and the data says this is what we should have for the size of our population. So the overall analysis of the jail was obviously the 17 FTE, which the sheriff talked about. 6 of them were coming from the levy, which is great. We're also looking, they wanted to look at an administrative assistant in the jail. We don't currently have any of those. And then 1 facility maintenance specialist. Based on the square footage of our facility, the age, again, some of it built back in 1959, we should have national practice we should have 1 more than we currently do in our maintenance department based on the size and age of our facility, which if you talk to our maintenance, they would definitely agree with you on that. They're always running around fixing stuff. And then obviously the biggest recommendation was building a new jail. based on the size and age of our current facility, and just changes in correctional practices and policies over the years. Things have improved. New data comes out showing how we can do things better, but we're still in an old facility, unfortunately, that we've made work in over the years, and that's a credit to the staff working in the jail of making it work.
I think we're done.
That's it.
Well, this is a very comprehensive study. I read through it. I had questions. You've answered most of them. I'm sure our commissioners have comments. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about early release issues because of lack of room and lack of deputies, essentially?
I'm sorry,
Early release issues?
Sure.
How does that work, and why do you do it? I do remember when I was back here with Craig at one point, the judges were, that was with Judge Sealander. They were really not happy. You
Yeah.
remember that, too? That
I
was a
do
wonderful.
remember.
Yeah, you
And
do.
some things have changed since in pretrial release
Yeah.
and doing some things differently.
So we've worked very closely with the DA's office and the judges to try to, through pretrial, to try to do that. But unfortunately, the numbers, we have a finite number of beds, and the numbers of our population increase, and so have our intakes. And by law, we can only hold as many as our facility will hold. And so we have to make decisions, but those decisions, we've worked with, like I said, the courts and DA's office to come up with a system to ensure that the least dangerous individual is released. Not that we would like to release anybody, but that is part of the process. We also, a couple of years ago, started a pretrial process in our system where we have individuals come and interview people who are arrested. We get that information to the courts. We make decisions like as to, so the judges make a better decision as to who's released, which hopefully relieves a little bit of pressure on us. There is some more work we're doing right now with Senate Bill 48, which is also pretrial requirements, and we've been working with judges down and DA's office this last few months to get that done by July.
Commissioner Schrader, are you finished?
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I have well, hopefully hear the rest of your presentation. I have a lot of questions, but now that I have you on the jail, I just want to ask on the COVID restrictions. Do you have limited capacity? Have we cut that capacity in half or more because of COVID?
There are still COVID restrictions that we're still under. When it first started, we were about half. We have slowly increased those numbers. We're about 60-some, 70% now. But we still have certain precautionary measures. We still have cases. We still have about 5, 6 cases right now in the jail. It's still ongoing, and so we have to make sure that we protect the population, and part of that is through what they call social distancing, where we've kind of decreased the number so they're not as close to be on top of each other. But we have instituted over the last couple of years, from vaccines to certain drugs that are available for those individuals who do get sick, and we've been continuing that. And so we have increased the population a little bit as we're testing to make sure our protocols are safe.
So I guess and maybe it's a question for the sheriff, I don't know, but I'm just knowing that how some of the congregate settings, whether they're public or whether they're private, they're really relaxing quite a bit of it across the state, right? So I just wondered where we are. If we're too restrictive, then we're going to limit the jail capacity, and I just wondered what our ability is at the jail to isolate those who do come down with COVID and try to maximize that. And just wonder, how much discretion is that from a policy standpoint? And where do we stack up with the rest of the state as far as that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so as a state, again, obviously Oregon, you've been to one county in Oregon, and so everyone's a little different. We tend to, in the metro region, we tend to try to keep closely aligned with each other as we're moving forward. There are still a lot of restrictions across the board, but all of us have been pulling back a little bit, where our intakes were restricted at the beginning. We were the first county in the region to open that back up to ensure that people are being arrested and held and taken to jail, and so we were one of the first to do that. But at the same time, we're still seeing COVID cases. We have really probably only for a month or two not seen them, and so we're trying to maintain that along with talking to OHA and public health. We talk to OHA weekly to try to get a feel for what would be the best practice to keep safe. Obviously, as we've seen recently, there's been a few lawsuits. The Oregon Appeals Court allowed for some lawsuits to do
Class action.
class actions, which obviously is, we don't want to put our population in that type of situation, that the county is wasting dollars on lawsuits, and so we were trying to keep that balance. But like I said, we've been slowly moving out of it. The last few weeks, lowered some restrictions, while at the same time increasing testing and other things to try to prevent what would be catastrophic if we had a huge outbreak across the whole facility. That would close down the jail, which would cause nobody to be brought, and we don't want that.
So last question on this, I guess related to the jail, and that is how much discretion do we have as far as requirements for employees, sheriff or jail's deputy staff, so forth, as far as vaccines or mandates or the masking? Knowing we want to bring and invite people, and hire people at the county. So how are we doing there?
We've been, I don't want to use the term cherry picking people from other agencies, but we've been hiring in fact, the last 3 were from other agencies. We do still follow the OAR, which classifies part of the facility as a medical facility, which does require either vaccines or having on file an exemption, which we follow the county's process for that, and we have done that. And currently, as a jail for like masks and stuff, they are still required in the medical parts of the facility when we're doing that to comply with the OAR. And so we have not, hiring-wise, that has not really been an issue. We're still hiring and have been hiring. In fact, we've hired 7, I think, this year in the jail. So it's an ongoing thing. All of us, including the public, we'd all love to not have to deal with or hear COVID again. Myself included, who's probably had more meetings than anybody else in the county on it, besides probably Dr. Present. But we're slowly getting through it, and I think the fact that we've had no major medical issues with any of our adults in custody or staff, I think, is a testament to those practices.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that it, Commissioner Savas? I don't see any commissioners in the queue. I was going to ask some questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. You cite population as a reason for the increased jail capacity and obviously the patrols, investigations, and so forth. Did this study address the increase in crime, drug use, abuse, and property crimes, especially against businesses, which we hear about a lot? How do you address the crime issue?
So we provided Matrix with some of the information of the legislative changes, ballot measure 110, which that will affect folks coming through, right? So as much as they can factor that in, some of those specific to Oregon factors were factored into the staffing, into the jail population. And of course, if the law changes again, that could have, an impact on projections for, daily populations for the jail. So as much as we could.
Yeah.
And kind of piggybacking on the Measure 110, which is always a question that gets brought up a lot, the fact that, there are certain drugs that have been considered now legal, that has not diminished the individuals who are coming into the jail who are either under the influence or have drug or alcohol abuse issues. And that is still a huge, huge problem, something we're still dealing with. We're still seeing crimes that have a nexus to drugs and alcohol abuse, and so there's a substance abuse issue, and we're also looking at that.
And
We have
that would-
programs in the
Would that spill
jail.
over into property crimes?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
So one really affects the other. One of my next question is, you say open all medical and health beds in the jail. How many are there? You say did I hear right, you want to do that, or you are going to do that?
So it's 26.
26?
And that is a portion of the levy we specifically asked voters to fund. And that is a total of 6 deputies that'll be levy funded to.
Okay, I see my notes here, 6 in the jail. That goes directly to those beds, is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Next question. Am I reading the study correctly, that an increase of 23 overall positions?
So the recommended sworn positions are recommending 31. So 17 at the jail, 8 in investigations, and 6 in patrol. And then 9 non-sworns.
Okay, 9
That's throughout.
non-sworn. And with the 12-cent levy. That puts us at 40, and the 12-cent levy buys us how many of those 40?
Yeah, so we have 26 sworn that are coming in with the 12-cent increase on the levy, and 3 non-sworn positions. And so the majority of those sworn positions will be going, 16 of those will be going to patrol.
Oh, good, okay.
Because for me, I'm not satisfied with the 40%.
Okay,
That to
so-
me is treading water.
Right, so 40 versus 20, 40 minus 29, we're at 11, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so according to your staffing study, you still would be 11 short on today's values.
Yes.
What about going forward?
So going forward, in our proposal for our, that we'll be putting forth for the Budget Committee, is to fund an additional 6 jail security deputy positions for the jail.
With the budget going forward?
Yeah, so we'll be doing a policy level proposal for 6 to get us closer, for the jail, to get us closer to that 17. So if we have 6 for the levy, and if this were passed through by the Budget Committee to fund 6 additional jail deputies, that'd be 12 of the 17 that we need for the jail.
Okay, I'm looking at your overall number because it's easy math for me. So,
Sure.
let me reiterate again. Your staffing study says you need 40 overall for
Yes.
jail, patrol, investigation, sex crimes, family justice center, correct?
Yes.
So I'm looking at that number, 40, and with the 12 cents, you will get 29 overall, okay, which means you're 11 short.
Yes.
In your policy level proposal, you've asked for an additional 6.
Yes.
Which means you're still 5 short.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that what we're.
You've got it.
I don't know what the board is going to do at budget, but at least with the sheriff's levy, we're starting to chip away at this. My last question for you, what about your unfilled vacancies? Do you have those currently in your budget that money is being allocated for?
Yes.
And what are you doing about filling those unfilled
Yeah,
vacancies?
so hiring has been a huge priority for us. As I took over as sheriff, if you remember that we had, in the early 90s, we had a large group that were of sworn, that were hired, that retired. And so coming in, we had a lot of vacancies. Last year, we hired 20, I'm just going to talk about patrol, 29 patrol deputies last year. To give you a perspective, the year prior, we hired 12. So when I came in knowing that we had this big deficit, challenges with, with recruiting good people, our pledge is to gear up recruitment. And so we hired 29 last year. Currently, we're going to surpass that this year. To give you an idea, we have 19 patrol deputies who are currently in training. 15 of those will turn out by the end of this year if they make training. And we'll have some attrition with that because not all of them will pass through our very rigorous training. And then we know that there are 6 jail deputies currently in training.
6, yep.
And I think you have 10 vacancies, I believe.
Yes, and I got 9 in backgrounds currently.
And then we have 19 others currently in patrol side in some sort of hiring background, conditional offer, psych, medical. So 19.
So let's go back to how I look at numbers, because it helps me, I get it straight in my mind. We have 11 short. You've asked 6 for the budget. Does that take into account your unfilled vacancies that's already in your budget? So if you fill those vacancies that's currently in your budget, would you need to ask for another 6, is what I'm trying to
Yes.
figure out.
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
She's correct. So even when all the vacancies are filled, based on this staffing study, there's still 40 positions short.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for answering my questions. I appreciate it. We have a couple commissioners in the queue. Sonia Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. You referred a lot to proactive patrol, proactive policing. I'm just interested in how that's implemented throughout Clackamas County, especially in our more rural, unincorporated areas. And does the incorporation of proactive patrol increase the need is that part of this study in defining what the need is for our patrol increases?
Yeah, so I think, looking at the proactiveness, I mean, folks want to see, deputies on patrol not going to and from a call, right? So the time to do traffic stops, I know that, to deter crime, to have that presence, right? To stop and talk with folks. We're not doing that right now. We are running from call to call to call. And I think our community wants that, and I want to bring that to our community. I want for our deputies to know who's in their patrol district, and we just don't have time for that. It's challenging in the rural areas, but it's not doable. I would love for our deputies to go to the CPO and the Hamlet meetings, and for that community to know who's working in their area. That is my vision, and so to get there, that was why the ask of the levy to add those deputy positions, because I know that we're not able to do that, and that's part of the reason. It's not for not wanting to, it's just really time. And because we want to serve victims of crime too, so we want to get to those calls and serve our community, but we also want to prevent that crime from happening in the first place.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree, people would like to talk to
Yep.
our sworn, uniformed folks. Paul Savas?
Yeah, so we've expanded beyond the jail, which is great. So I'm just going to take advantage of this while we're on that. So I was fascinated when I actually read the report, and I'm going to go back and do probably another couple reads on it, because I have a lot of questions I think I want to be able to ask and look into. But what this report I couldn't find, but it did spell out the cities. So identified the city of Wilsonville, Contract City, the city of Happy Valley, and then the unincorporated. Okay. And so not for today, but one question I came away with is, all right, so how do we price those contracts to where they're fair, right? So that they get what they pay for, and then in the rest of the county, the taxpayers get what they pay for. And clearly, the numbers dictate that it's not really working out very well when it comes to proactivity, for example. So, but what it doesn't even speak to, and again, I'll go back and look at it again, so I may have overlooked it, but it doesn't talk about ELED. And that's a autonomous entity, it's a district, right? So it, in and of itself, is an entity, just like the city, or the cities. So how is that treated or discussed here, and making sure that the ELED is getting that proactivity, that level of service, the bang for the buck, how making sure that the dollars are being spread, or the resources are being spread equitably?
Yeah, no, I thank you for that. So the ELAD, I agree with you about spelling that out and ensuring that they're equally represented. The ELAD is, I believe 36 positions of the overall staffing for patrol. And so there's no way of parsing that out from this overall staffing study. But we have our dashboards that are now available online. We do have an ELED tab that you can separate out the calls for service for the ELED. I can tell you that the ELED is being served well. And so hopefully with that data that we're showing that, but not for the staffing study. There's no way that we could separate out the actual ELED.
Okay, so how about on the costing of the cities? I mean, when it comes to those contracts, how do we know that we're getting the right amount, or we're not overcharging the cities?
So they pay for, it's all part of our cost metrics that we negotiate with the cities, and I think we've done a very good job on the contract cities, and we're not upside down with the cities. So we have to tell the cities sometimes, we can't staff you if you want to add a deputy. We're not doing that because we have to obviously take care of our patrol first. I can tell you that they pay, I believe it's a year ahead of time now. So if they want a deputy to come to their city, they pay for a year before they get someone, because they're paying for the training time. If they were their own city, they would be suffering like we are as far as how long it takes to recruit and train and send through the academy. And so that was our compensation for trying to even out, making sure that we are getting what we need from the contract cities, besides just, serving them and serving them well.
Yeah, well, that huge disparity between in the 30s of proactivity versus the 70s for the cities, that just jumps out as a red flag, so to speak.
Well, and they're paying for it, right? So they're putting their resources, they're paying for those deputies to be in there. They can certainly ask to, have less deputies and their proactivity rate would drop, but they've made an investment in public safety in those cities, and it's a stark contrast, which was very interesting when you look at the service level that they're getting. And they're very satisfied with what they get from us, because it's not only just patrol, but it's all the special units that come with it, right? If they have a SWAT call with, a person, they get the sheriff's office resources on that. So they're very satisfied with what they get from the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I'd just love to see the math on how that is financed or costed out to make sure that what do we need to do, whether we are in ELED or we are an unincorporated, to get that same bang for the buck.
Yeah. We can talk more about it.
Yeah. Any other questions? I have one last question. How much does it cost to train a deputy? I should have given you
You
a
should
heads
have,
up on
because
that.
I'm working on those slides
You know what?
right now.
Why don't you bring it to budget?
I will.
And
So
then why don't you also bring a number, how much does it cost to equip them? And does
I have
the
those
sheriff's
numbers.
department pay for all their gear and guns and whatever uniforms? Does a deputy bear some of that cost themselves?
They do.
I would like to know what that ratio is.
Yeah, so I'm working on something now that actually addresses all of what you're asking for.
Oh, good. I don't know if we'll get it in budget, if that's appropriate time.
I can get it to you ahead of time, too, if
Gary,
you want.
I'm going to make a recommendation to staff that all of our budget committee members listen to this presentation today and get the staffing study. I would like to have them up to speed before we start deliberations on budget, so they have an understanding what is going on, what is being asked for, and that's why I asked for the 40 number and then how that's parsed out. I think it would really behoove them to understand that, and it gives them, it's a little extra work, but especially to listen to this and just go forward with that. And then have them bring questions back ahead of time if they would, and then we'll just give them to Lee or whomever we're supposed to do that with. I think that would be really good.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments from my commissioners today? Gary, do you have any comments?
No, thank you.
Well, this has been great.
Yeah,
Thank you for explaining all this. It's been
Yep.
sitting on my desk, and I've been going through it page by page, trying to add up, do the math on this, exactly what's needed. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the support of the levy, which certainly is going to be really a shot in the arm for our staffing. So thank you. Thank you all.
You bet.
Yep.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the rest of the issues list, Commissioners. We'll start with consent agenda review. We'll start with transportation and development. Item 1, approval of a resolution declaring the public necessity and purpose for acquisition of rights-of-way, easements, and fee property for the South Ivy Street pedestrian intersection improvements project and authorizing good faith negotiations and condemnation actions. Total project value is $6,397,399, of which $878,371 has been allocated to right-of-way. Funding is through the Oregon Local Project Program Fund and County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson is the Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair and Commission. Here to talk to you about Ivy Street once again. This essentially is that road that was associated with the IGA we just recently signed for its future transfer and to the city of Canby. Okay? There's one item which needs to be corrected on the staff report because it doesn't note the fact that there's local government and other funding associated with it, because essentially the city of Canby is paying $4.2 million of that $6 million tab that you see on here. We will make those corrections should the board authorize us moving forward. Essentially, this is a right of necessity. These are not new to you. We do them as a part of every project that we do, which is a capital project. This is not authorizing condemnation. Should any request for condemnation be necessary, we would bring that forward to the board in an executive session for discussion. This essentially allows our right-of-way agents to go out and do good faith negotiations for right-of-way associated with this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments for the presenter? Commissioner Fisher.
Thanks. So why do we title it "and condemnation actions" if they aren't part of, if those are decided separately?
It's required by statute that we stipulate that language specifically because it does authorize the public. It notes a public need for this right-of-way, and we have that act to condemn. It does not, however,
Mean that you will do
mean that
that?
we will condemn, correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any objections to this? Seeing none, thank you.
Item 2, approval of board order vacating a portion of Whipple Avenue, a local access road. Total agreement value is $3,081.43. Funding is through user fees. No county general funds are involved.
Just interesting information, Whipple Avenue was created October 1st, 1924. Essentially, this is a 12-foot wide gravel road within the dedicated 30 feet of right-of-way that dead ends at 3 lots southeasterly of Nafe Road. This is a petition request, and so the petitioner has proposed to vacate this 274 feet. It's about 8,209 square feet of right-of-way. And has recorded an ingress, egress, and utility easement for all the adjoining properties. The right-of-way essentially serves no public need and is not a benefit to the traveling public. The petition to vacate was filed under ORS 368341. They have submitted the appropriate fee. They have acknowledged 100% of the abutting property owners are in support of this as a part of the process. And essentially, our department has coordinated with transportation maintenance, engineering, planning. We've also reached out to all local utility providers, and no issues have been raised. So essentially, we have a request to vacate here that has been approved or requested by 100% of the abutting property owners, and there's no public need for the property or the right-of-way.
Great. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. I have just a
Yep.
question. So I know the street, and I'm just curious as to, in the future, any amenities that are access-wise, is that going to be held with responsibility for maintenance by the private property owner?
That is correct.
Okay. And does it only affect one property owner, or will it affect maintenance in the future? Will it affect future properties?
Essentially, all maintenance responsibilities for the road will be conveyed. In fact, it may even be that now, because I think it's a public right-of-way, not a county-maintained road. But essentially, consistent with the current situation, all adjoining property owners will own maintenance responsibility for that road. The county will have no maintenance responsibility.
Right, so, yeah, and the reason I bring this up is because sometimes when we do these and a development comes in, and this is part of a development, or if it's a part of development, there's the assumption that the county is the one who paves the road, and then the neighbors get all upset when they realize, no, that's on them. So we're setting ourselves up for a similar, potentially in the future, for a similar misunderstanding, if you will.
I say that information has been shared with every adjoining property owner, that they will have maintenance responsibility for that road, and they still are requesting the 100% vacation of that particular road. So they are firmly aware of the fact of their future maintenance responsibility. As it relates to future development, I'm not totally in tune with exactly what's happening around the property. I could come back to you and speak to you about that. But I can affirm to this board, they are aware of that responsibility now and going into the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Good. Any objections? Seeing none, thank you.
Item 3, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation to complete the to complete the walk, bike, Clackamas plan, which would update the county's pedestrian and bicycle master plans. Total grant value is $222,000, including county matching funds of $22,500. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Transportation and the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved.
The county was awarded a transportation and growth management grant to simultaneously update the pedestrian and bicycle master plans. Both were last updated in 2003. The goal of this project is to establish a comprehensive long-term vision, improving the walkability and biking as a mode of transportation in Clackamas County. The end result will be a document that guides and equitably prioritize future biking and walking transportation investments and active transportation policy in Clackamas County for the next 20 years. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments for Dan?
It's been 20 years, huh?
Dan, will that study
It's okay.
also take into consideration the need for new arterials? I mean, are you going to look at all that together?
It will take a look and be coordinated with the discussion we're having about a new transportation system plan update. The primary, and also keep in mind these studies balance those type of topics specifically. Will this specifically be looking at arterials? No, it will not. But what it will be looking at are connections that can possibly be made to walk or bike. And then feedback from that will roll into our transportation system plan update, which is the document that really looks at what the necessity for new roads.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schrader, you had a comment.
No, I just said, Dan, it's been 20 years since we've updated this, right? Or at least that, because that's.
It has been
yeah,
a long time.
Really long time, yeah.
Yeah.
Glad we're doing it.
Yep,
Okay.
it's about time.
Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 4, we're going to pull, so staff can do some more work. We'll bring back to you next week or the week after. Item 5, approval of a commercial lease of development agency property to One Monarch Center. Total agreement value is $35,292. Funding is through rental payments. No county general funds are involved.
You are aware of this lease. In fact, it does, it ties to the disposition agreement we're going to be discussing next. This is associated with the Monarch property. These are properties owned by the development agency, which we have leased to an adjoining property owner for some time. This essentially is an extension of that lease. And there's one thing I want to make sure we're clear. This is a lease that allows this adjoining property owner to continue to use the property until this sales agreement is done, then this lease terminates. There are still steps that take place should the board approve this disposition agreement that need to happen, so we need to extend the lease until such time that occurs.
Explained well, Dan. Any objections to that? Seeing none, go ahead.
So Dan, which board is making this decision? The Development
We will-
Agency Board or the Board of County
The
Commissioners?
Development Agency Board will make that correction as it goes in front on the consent agenda.
So this item and item 6 should be for the Development
That
Agency
is
Board?
correct. That is correct.
We will now recess as the Board of County Commissioners, and we will convene as the Development Agency Board.
Thank you for your flexibility, Chair. I apologize. Please
That's all right.
don't put me in a spot here, Dan.
I just caught that.
All right,
Yep.
so item 5 then, are you okay as the Development Agency Board? Any questions or concerns?
Commissioners, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
item 6, you're still meeting as the Development Agency Board. Approval of a disposition agreement with One Monarch Center for the sale of development agency property. Total agreement value is $870,489, less agreed-upon closing costs, funded through payment from acquiring party. No county general funds are involved.
This ties with the previous lease. This is essentially the acquisition of that property, which we have discussed with the board previously. The direction the board had given staff was essentially to look to sell the property and liquidate the property with this disposition at a appraised value. We have appraised the property. The property appraisal came back at $870,489. We have received an offer in full for the acquisition of that particular property at that price. There is a disposition agreement, which gives due diligence time for this individual to go forward and do additional analysis. And it stipulates within that agreement steps in which that acquisition is finalized. So with that,
What's the expiration date on this offer?
I'd have to go look to be specific, but I believe the disposition agreement is good for a year.
A year?
Yep.
And the lease is extended?
For a year.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Any further questions for commissioners on this?
We're now back as the board.
Okay, if you'd please reconvene now as the Board of Commissioners Chair.
I will recess as the Development Agency and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. So this is still Transportation and Development Consent Agenda Request. Item 7, approval of an amendment to a contract with David Evans and Associates for consulting engineering services for the Canby-Markham Highway Bear Creek Bridge project due to increased scope of work. The amendment value is $230,837.15. The total agreement value is now $529,737.26. Funding is through the Oregon Local Project Program Fund and the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved.
So the county obtained some Highway Bridge Fund program money from the Oregon Department of Transportation Local Bridge Program to replace the existing bridge over Bear Creek on Canby-Markham Highway. The existing bridge, built in 1960, is showing significant signs of decay as a result of heavy truck traffic. The bridge is considered functionally obsolete because of its narrow nature and structurally deficient, with a sufficiency rating of 27.2 out of 100. Essentially, the purpose of this contract, back up, the total cost, we already talked about the total cost. The purpose of this contract amendment is to provide consulting engineering services during the project construction. The service to be provided included support to county staff with construction engineering, contractor submittal reviews, inspection assistance, clarification on design details, and developing as constructed plans. The amendment is, as Gary has said, $230,837.15. I don't know how Shannon reads all this stuff to you on the consent. It's amazing.
Yeah, any questions or comments for the presenter?
Yeah, I do. Just
Yeah, go ahead.
one basic one, Dan. So I'm trying to understand, is it because we missed something, or are we actually adding something? I mean, what's the, that's a lot of money.
We're adding the assistance. We're balancing 47 to 51 capital projects right now, and in the intent to make sure this gets on scheduled on delivery time. We're adding some amendment in here to do those inspection and additional consultant services to assist with that.
So does it increase the value or the cost of the project?
Yeah, it increased the cost of that project by the dollars associated where those are costs that we would have if we had to hire additional FTE to do that service as well.
Well, that's why I'm trying to ask the question. So I'm trying to reconcile that response. If it was anticipated that we would be doing it,
So
would it not be embedded in the price originally?
I can come back to you with specifics on that. I mean, it's the nuance of balancing an extensive capital program. We don't look for these services on every project we do. We look for them on specific ones. Those that have more of a technical nature to them that we may not have the local internal expertise. I'd have to talk to the specific PM to see if they had intended to do this. I would assume they had not originally, but based on the current scope of projects we have, they may have moved other resources to other projects. There are a number that we have right now that are dealing with culvert failures and or smaller bridge projects, so we may have reallocated those staff to those projects, and that has resulted in the need to require additional services on this project. But if you were looking for more detailed specificity around that, I'd have to go and discuss that and come back
Yeah, I
to you.
guess what I'm really driving at, is that if this was not anticipated, is this maybe, an indicator of things to come with this particular project and other projects where that's a substantial increase in cost. So I'm just trying to understand that, because if that is the tip of the spear or what's to come, then I'm concerned about the project being considerably more than ever anticipated.
Yeah,
This is
and
just for consulting.
well, and this, again, this is just consulting services, so it's not the total capital project. I'm not sure if we have that total capital the total capital project is $2.6 million. And so this was an original consulting contract that we expanded those services on afterwards. And again, the specificity on the timing, I'll have to get back to you and confirm that with you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Any objections? Seeing none.
Item 8, approval of a contract with Quincy Engineering Incorporated for design services for the Molalla River Knights Bridge Road Rehabilitation Project. Contract value is $531,900.83. Funding is through the Oregon Local Project Program funds and the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved.
We seem to have a lot of bridges built in the 1960s. This happens to be another one, and is showing extensive signs of decay as a result of its age and heavy truck traffic. The bridge has a sufficiency rating of 38.5 and requires load and weight restrictions to be placed on the bridge. The proposed rehabilitation will include a Phase 1 seismic retrofit of the superstructure, painting of all the steel girders, patching and sealing on the deck, repairing concrete, additional work regarding scour repairs for the bridge. The proposed improvements are expected to remove the load and weight restrictions on the bridge, which is a good thing, which allows for more circulation of our heavy weight traffic. The consultant will provide design services consisting of project management, survey, environmental documentation, permitting, utility, geotechnical, public outreach assistance, right-of-way services, et cetera. Intergovernmental agreements have been established with the Oregon Department of Transport, with ODOT, which will be providing 89.73% of the cost of the project. It's limited to $3.2 million approximately. County Road Fund will be a match for that at 10.27%. which is an estimated around $370,000. This project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on September 29, 2021. Proposals were publicly opened on November 2nd, 2021. The evaluation committee scored Quincy Engineering the highest. I know that sounds like a delay, but during that time, the scope of the work and project design fees were negotiated and finalized as they are presented before you here today. So,
That's a good deal for our money, isn't it? Having some, is this the bridge out of Canby?
Yes.
On 99? Mhm. And when do you expect that construction to begin? Not during fair, I hope.
I will let you know.
Yeah, that could pose a problem.
Well, I mean, the nuances around that will be assessed as a part of this design process, which is currently underway. There will be a construction schedule associated with that, but I would say in the upcoming years, but to be determined.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any other injections? Seeing none, going forward.
We will make the suggested edits that we discussed. We will also inform the county admin of the change and those two items going on the Development Agency Board's agenda versus the Board of County Commissioners.
Got it, thank you. All right, next, disaster management. Item 1, approval of an amendment to a subrecipient agreement with the City of Portland for fiscal year 2019 Urban Area Security Initiative funds, extending the duration of the agreement to November 1, 2022. Total grant value remains at $387,700. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. No county general funds are involved. Daniel Neibauer is the Interim Director of Disaster Management. Go ahead.
Commissioners, this just extends the opportunity to use grant funds that are from the Urban Area Security Initiative to complete a couple of the projects below, some of them with using the Citizen Corps, Citizen Corps, and get to do some trainings and actually meet in person, which will be a nice change.
Any questions or comments for the presenter? Seeing none?
Okay, thank you. So we'll add all of these items you heard today to this Thursday's business meeting, Commissioners.
Yep. Thank you.
Next, City of West Lynn requests to have local delivery only, no through truck route on Borland Road extended into the city on Willamette Falls Drive to Ostman Road. Dan Johnson will present as well. There's a memo in your packet. This is a request from the city.
So happy to be up here again. Essentially, there is a board order, 97-344. Borland Road between Stafford Road and the Tualatin River is designated as a local delivery only, no through truck route. Okay? That is illustrated on the map, which is a part of your packet. You will see it as the red lined section that is on that map. Okay? Having said that, West Lynn School District is constructing a new school within the city of West Lynn adjacent to Willamette Falls Drive, about 1/10 of a mile east of the Tualatin River. The map also identifies to you the school site that is on there. It's that triangle piece right there. Currently, trucks accessing the site are required to use I-205 at 10th Street interchange to gain access to the site, which essentially directs traffic through that Willamette community down there off of I-205, the area you're very familiar with. The city prefers trucks not traveling through downtown Willamette and would like the trucks to access the site via Borland Road. Our traffic engineering and motor carrier staff reviewed the routing options, the ones they currently have off 10th Street and down through Willamette versus the Borland Road area up the north, and concluded that allowing trucks to travel to and from the site using Borland Road will not create any safety or operational issues on Borland Road. The city has provided an official request to make this change, basically extending that designation. Again, going back to your map, it shows this green line down here into the city. However, the board needs to concur with that, as this is a board directive and a board order that needs to be adopted. If the board concurs with this change, staff will prepare an amendment to the board order 97-344 and submit it for consideration. I will inform the board has heard concerns from Borland Road residents about previously there being truck traffic on Borland Road, because they are aware of the fact that it is local deliveries only. In fact, I believe the board received some emails, which we then followed up on. We actually cited, I believe, the contractor, because they were not supposed to be using that road, which then redirected them through 10th Street.
Are you done?
I'm going to leave it there. Yep.
Okay, good. I have some real concerns about this. And I'll just start first. I have not heard from any of the elected officials in the city of Westland. Just because we designate this road as such doesn't mean trucks won't be doing it. And how will they know that this is a local access-only road until there's a sign posted? But to me, what the larger issue is, and I'm not going to support this policy today, because what's going to happen when tolling starts? Dan, this is a big philosophical question. Are we going to limit all the cities who are objecting to these trucks leaving I-205 and the diversion issue? Are we going to all of a sudden, and all of our county roads, because we're setting a precedence here, and I did read the packet, I know there's other roads that have been designated, but the time and place that those roads were designated, that particular Board of County Commissioners were probably very correct in doing that, but they're not dealing with diversion and tolling for very near future. So I'm concerned that we have not addressed that issue if we were to make this decision today. I think that we have not reviewed it enough. I think we have not looked at all the parameters involved in it. I understand. Boy, those poor people on Borland, if they think that this little bit of a truck traffic is a problem, wait until tolling comes along their way. Are they going to request us that, gee, nobody can drive on the road if you only live on Borland Road? I mean, I can see a whole bunch of issues arising out of the tolling, the tolling specter that's hanging over us, and we have not addressed that diversion issue at all at our level, because we're waiting for others to do it for us. And you and I have talked before about our county roads on diversion, and this board is going to have a policy session or an issue session where I have been concerned, because I'm getting comments in the rural areas of Clackamas County that because of increased population, people moving to the areas of Estacada and Malala and Canby and Malino and all those areas in between, that our local access roads are already increasing in car traffic, just commuter traffic to Portland. And I tell the citizens out there, says, well, if you think this is bad, wait till tolling starts. You're really going to have a conundrum. So that's where I'm at on this. Commissioner Savas, you're in the queue.
Yeah, so Dan, I'm sure there's criteria in which these routes are based on, and so big one for me is safety, right? These are big trucks, these are curvy roads. Some of this has sidewalks and, fog lines that provide some or none. So from a safety standpoint, what's the best route? Answer that one, please. And what are the other criteria in which this is based on? Frankly, I mean, I don't know where safety ranks, but it seems to me that safety is a big issue, I would assume.
So let's start with the purpose of the route. The purpose of the route, because it's not a local access only, it's this local delivery only. And the intent was essentially, and no through trucks, okay? So the intent was to stop some of the concern that you were talking about traffic cutting through Borland Road when I-205 and those other areas were congested, okay? And there's other roads in the policy session, or in the board order. I am not a safety professional. I would probably rely on Joe Merrick and others within our group to talk about that. I think there are trade-offs that we are doing. I mean, the one is the nature of Borland Road in a more rural road versus trucks going through that densely populated area, it's somewhat populated area of Willamette. And, I mean, that's why I think you see the verbiage the way it is now, where it talks about will not create any safety or operational issues on Borland Road. There are trade-offs on what safety is as it's related to this particular request. I'd be glad to bring Joe back and have a more detailed discussion with you about the safety pros and cons on that. I think it's pretty easy to understand the fact that putting heavy trucks through more highly populated areas is probably less safe than putting them on certain rural roads that we have. But again, there are trade-offs as it relates to that safety. So you talked to me about the most safest route. I plead the fifth until I talk to Joe about that.
Yeah, well, I want to just say that, just to build on what Commissioner Smith was saying with regard to diversion, and as you know, you and I and Joe went out on part of Stafford Road one day just to survey some of the safety issues around some of the wrecks.
Sure.
It was so bad
Yeah.
that staff recommendation was not to even get out of the car, out of the van, which I'm not, that's might not be critical. That's an observation and a story that says if it's so bad you can't even get out of the truck, then what does that say about pedestrian traffic or neighbors or anyone else going to their mailbox or anything else? It is extremely dangerous. That's why we got behind the I-205 widening project in the first place, only to have it just somewhat relatively dismissed by ODOT and to say, okay, now we're going to toll people, which is a greater encouragement for people to basically divert onto these local roads, which are not ready for that. And there are no resources. There is nothing. There's no commitments to improving those roads along the 205 corridor, the surface streets in which these are being used. That gives me great pause. That's why safety is way up there for me.
I don't disagree with your comments on safety either. That's why I wanted to have the future policy session on our vehicle registration fee. You know, a previous board has said that it used for XYZ. However, we're dealing with issues like this, that we may want to redirect some of those funds to mention some of the safety concerns that you have for Borland Road. And I think that's very important. Mark Scholl is up next, but before Mark, I just want to say, you cite the construction of the school or having a permanent solution for a temporary construction project.
Correct.
All right, good. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Dan. What gross vehicle weight would apply to this deliveries only? In other words, if I'm coming through there with my standard TV and appliance cube van on my way through the neighborhood, am I going to be restricted? Or is this going to only apply to semi-traffic, big commercial trucks? I mean, what's the cutoff here?
I don't believe it has a specific weight associated with it. It's the destination in which they go. So if you look at the specific terminology, it talks about local delivery only, no through trucks.
Right, okay. So that tells me that just about everything on wheels that's a truck is going to be restricted.
Fall into that cat. It
And-
has limitations on where they can go. So that's
Gotcha.
why you talk about the request from the city is to extend it, because the city would then, or pardon me, the school site would then be a part of that local delivery, because it's delivering to an abutting property.
Right, okay.
So,
Any other questions from commissioners on this?
I just have a comment, and
Yes,
that is that,
go ahead.
last week we're discussing a completely different issue. Has nothing to do with this issue at all. But what's similar to me is that the leverage of the cities over the unincorporated areas, where is the equal voice? And I heard someone say the path of least resistance, which is bothersome to me because the path of least resistance is the unincorporated areas. So this is an unincorporated area, relatively rural part, right? Borland, Stafford, it's really rural.
Correct.
Right, on the edge of the urban growth boundary, but highly, frankly, from a traffic standpoint, from a vehicle standpoint, it's more of an urban setting, an urban traffic in a rural setting. And that part, I think, needs to be adequately addressed, again, from a safety standpoint. And shame on ODOT for not coming forth with a plan, frankly.
That's right, Paul. I would agree. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get my head around this, make sure I got it right. Right now, they can do local deliveries, not through traffic on Borland Road, but trucks can go through there to do whatever, the cubicle appliance truck, whatever that is. West Lynn does not want traffic entering from 10th Street up through Willamette to this new school site, wants the deliveries or any truck traffic to go through Borland Road.
Yeah.
So why, if they're already allowed, it's not through traffic, why do we need a board order?
If
What
you
am I
look-
missing here?
If you look at the map,
Yeah, I have been. Help me here.
is yours color?
Yeah.
Okay, so the current limitations on Borland are the red sections. They stop at the river.
Oh, okay.
So to be considered local.
So it would be through, if they went all the way the
Correct.
other end of the red into the green to the school site.
Correct, and so this
Got
would
it.
extend the green, so it would make it local.
And how far is that? I mean, not exactly, but is it very much
I think
distance?
it's a tenth of a mile.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and there aren't safety concerns?
It's not an extending it entirely through.
And it's just to access that school site?
So the big trucks.
I say that was the original intent, but I think they actually looked more holistically around items occurring in and around that area around the school site. So that's why you see the extension that extends past the school site. If you can see the green area that actually goes further south in the triangle. It connects to, I can't see that road, but an adjoining road there that provides circulation.
Okay, so it's more than just the school?
Yes.
So it's really wanting to expand that?
Yep.
Okay.
I also am mindful of the fact that the city of West Lynn, and I've had conversations with them, they are extremely worried about the diversion issue, as they should be. And I'm also wondering if this is a well-intended attempt to get ahead of the diversion issue by first trying to limit the truck traffic before this Board of County Commissioners can come up with a policy on addressing diversion and possibly diverting some of our vehicle registration fee dollars to areas like this for the safety concerns, for sidewalks, for more, traffic mitigation devices like lights so residences can pull out in a safe manner. I believe that policy session is tentatively scheduled for July. And I've talked quite a bit about staff with that because I do think that the county, we need to start discussing what we're going to do on diversion on our own streets that we're responsible for, that we pay for, because I don't believe that ODOT is going to come in and just say, everything is going to be copacetic and they're going to throw a bunch of money at us. Boy, that sure would be nice, Paul. You can go ahead and lobby for them for that.
Yeah.
But we do have a responsibility of our own on this. Any more discussion on this, Gary?
So board, do you want to amend the board order or not? I'm kind of hearing not.
I do not want to amend this board order. I do not want to have a board order on that. I've been very clear on this. It needs further discussion of an overarching policy. I think outreach is necessary for the city of West Lynn, and maybe we can work on the diversion issue together. I don't like situations like this where we're going to be saying, oh, yeah, boy, the county commissioners, stop traffic through, and this, maybe Oregon City can get the same policy, maybe Gladstone can get the same policy, and the list goes on and on and on and on. I think we need to have a real solid policy discussion on this. Commissioner Savas, you're up, and then Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I'm going to seize this opportunity to make a point. I kind of did it a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time, and that is that when we were discussing the vehicle registration fee increase potential, I had a number of problems with it. I talked about the formula a couple weeks ago, and the reason the formula is such a big deal is that when we are growing on the edges, right, the cities are responsible for whatever improvements they may be, even if it's a county road perhaps, or maybe not, right? But what happens is the burden, and you said it earlier, Chair, our rural roads are getting more congested as growth happens, and that burden is greater on the unincorporated area. Wilsonville, for example, when they increased Frog Pond on Stafford Road, that was a huge issue. It still is. Matter of fact, I had a conversation yesterday with someone on Stafford Road near 65th and Ellingson. That issue.
Yep.
There are major, and that becomes a burden of the unincorporated area, but yet the vehicle registration formula actually took away some of the funds, or the formula favored the cities, when really the problems that were being aggravated by these areas where it grows from suburban to urban has a huge financial demand. And that need was left financially unmet and actually was undermined by the formula. So I'm going to go back to that. I want to just highlight that again. Number of things wrong with that, but that is an issue that we need to address because we don't have the money to fix the rural roads. And in the metro region, unfortunately, where does all the money go? It goes in the urban metro area, and the dollars don't go out in the rural areas. And the rural areas get the short end of the stick, just as the unincorporated areas get the short end of the stick. And they're not always one and the same. Urban, rural, unincorporated.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
So the memo in the packet says that a school is being constructed. Is it under construction right now? What's the time frame?
It is under construction right now.
So if we wanted to provide support for the school and just deliveries to the school, could we potentially have a board order that just allowed deliveries through Borland for the school?
Until the school's constructed.
Yeah. I don't understand why we just don't.
I'd have to go back and research that
Okay.
and get back to you. But I can respond, I can get
Just kind of
response.
make it temporary, not permanent, yeah,
Yeah, just for, yeah, I mean, I
because of the construction
just
issue.
put on hold the other larger issue that I think we need time to discuss.
Yep. Should the
And
board
I don't know
desire, we will follow up on that and get back to you on that.
And I guess my overarching concern is a school is one thing. We have a collective responsibility to make sure there's enough schools and that our kids can go to school, and that's not a unincorporated or incorporated, that's just kids, right? We need to make sure that that all happens as seamlessly as possible. But this whole other area, and maybe I just need to take a little detour and drive through there to say, what will be here, what is here, or what kind of development is happening? What does this mean? What does this look like for the overall quality of life? I don't have the answers to that, but I really appreciate you pointing out the other part of Green, which goes down to Willamette Falls Drive.
I will tell you, the primary purpose is for the school construction. I will have to get back to this board in regards to it's our ability to establish a temporary relief for that.
Okay.
Yep.
And school will be out in a few weeks, and I don't know if that's going to have an diminished traffic because a lot of parents drive their kids to school these days. And so we could have some relief over the summer months. I don't know. But I think, Commissioners, if you're okay, we'll have Dan go back and look at the school construction issue and come back to us and we can get it scheduled, Gary.
Yeah, so you will research if the board can do an amendment that only is in effect for the construction of the school only.
Correct.
And it's time limited.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your
Thank you.
information. Gary, what's up next?
Thank you. Next, law library fees and fines. This is the last one, Commissioners, before the budget, if you want to approve these proposals or not. Jennifer Dalglish is the law library director. There was a memo in your packet. Welcome, Jennifer. Please, if you want to quickly give an update, and then the board can discuss.
Go ahead, please introduce yourself.
I'm Jennifer Daglish. I'm the director of the Law Library Department. Thank you.
Welcome.
We don't come very often.
I know you don't. You know what, we don't bite, so don't be
I
scared.
know. So the Law Library is requesting the board review and approve proposed amendments to the fees and fines schedule for fiscal year 2022-2023. The primary purpose of this amendment request is to add notary fees and Stevens Nest legal forms fees. The addition of these fees will improve and expand the law library services in line with our mission and plan. Since the law library doesn't request amendments very often, we also did a market and cost recovery analysis of all of our fees and fines and determined that some slight adjustments could be made, including minimal increases to copy, print, and circulation fees, And finally, there is a minor housekeeping request to remove the fax fees and any mentions of fax because we don't provide those services anymore.
So tell me, who uses the law library?
Our patron usage base is half legal professionals and half the general public.
General
So
public does use half of it. So basically, it's user pays for this, and fees have increased over time. Do judges use our law library and district attorneys?
yes and yes.
Okay, and do private sector attorneys use this library too? And you know, Gary, it makes
Very
me-
much so.
Yes, of course. Gary, it makes me wonder why this is a county administration function. I think the law library needs to be housed in the new courthouse moving forward, and they can take care of what needs to be done. It sounds like it's self-sufficient. No general funds are going to be used, so that's going to be a recommendation going forward for the next year, that we can start transitioning that even before our courthouse is being built. Commissioners, any further questions? Commissioner Salas.
Yeah, I got a couple. So was recently here at the chamber, we were asked about the vital records counter, that why isn't it open 5 days a week? Which leads me to ask this question: is the law library accessible 5 days a week?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and where's it housed today? Isn't it?
We're currently in the courthouse annex, which is the Holman Building at 821 Main Street, right next door to the courthouse.
Okay.
We've been there for 15 years.
Is there not a way? Getting back to the chair's point she was making, knowing if half the usage is out of our justice system, if you will, or the users of our justice system, that those fees aren't, or the cost aren't associated with that, or is it beyond? If you were to break down the lawyers and all those people that are using it, aside from the public, putting the public aside and use, then that's on whose behalf when it comes to government? How much of that is government, that 50%?
And so when you say half being part of our Justice Department, that's not altogether accurate, because when I said legal professionals, that's going to include all of the attorneys that are sole practitioners, small firms, boutique firms, large law firms, and I'm not sure that I'd probably classify those under government officials. And so it's a little bit more difficult to qualify exactly how many are city, county, state employees that use the law library, but I would say that's going to be a very minor percentage of that half that is that totals legal professionals.
Okay, so the justice system is not part of the users, really, then?
It is, but it's minor. It's, county council, whenever I have requests from them for legal research assistance, the district attorneys don't use the law library as much because they have their own law library and they have an online legal research subscriptions contract, and we do assist judges.
Okay.
But it's not, it's not a lot. And right now, over the last 2 years, our patron usage has been a little bit more heavy towards general public. That's going to be pro se's, people who are representing themselves, self-represented litigants and potential self-represented litigants. And then in addition to that, just your average people who are doing legal research, like students, authors, reporters, paralegals.
Okay.
Yeah. My closing comment on this, it just seems that there's a lot of paper production, really, where these fees are associated with photocopies and so forth. So it seems in the electronic world we're in, where that would be more being phasing out than it would be growing.
Well, we do like to encourage people to make photocopies of the print materials, so that's going to be items and resources that are in the law library collection that are in print. The vast majority of our print materials are not available online for free or at low cost, or not available online at all. That's the reason we have about approximately 10,000 titles in our collection. And so by keeping these fees to photocopy and make prints low, we're encouraging people to not do things like rip out pages or steal books that are very expensive to replace if you can actually replace them.
I need to learn more about the law library.
Yeah. Why don't you do that in your
I'll be
spare
honest.
time? Me too.
Yeah, I'll have some spare time.
Yeah,
soon.
Come on
Gary,
down,
you-
I'd be happy to give you a
Yeah, just a
tour.
moment. Gary, Gary, you have your light on.
So we'll be talking more about this in your budget committee meetings, but a real recap, this is another thing the state requires. The state requires counties to build a courthouse and maintain it and to have a law library. And the employees are county employees. You have 2 employees, right? But there's no general fund, and it's an unfunded mandate. The state keeps cutting the costs for law libraries, but we're expected to house it, have the employees. It's a mess. So poor Jennifer is just doing her best. She has
Oh, yeah.
limited state dollars. These small increase in fines will help her to operate, but we got to maintain a law library as required by state law.
I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
move that we approve option 1, which is the proposal to increase the fees for the law library.
Second.
Commissioner Fisher has moved to increase the fees for the law library, keeps it self-supporting, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the poll.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
No.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
No. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We appreciate your work.
Thank you. Next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, May 5th, 2022 at 10 a.m. Clerk Sherry Hall will give a quick elections update. You have 2 public hearings. One is a Clackamas County supplemental budget resolution, and the second is the perhaps final public hearing on the request to form a joint water and sanitary authority for the Oak Lodge Water Services. And then you have all the consent agenda items you approved today. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know by Thursday, and staff will provide that for you. Next, advisory boards and commission appointments. Shannon, would you please present?
Yes, thank you. We have just one for you today, the Library District Budget Committee. They have 5 members are allowed 3-year terms, and they currently have 2 openings. After their recruitment, they received 1 application, and they will continue to look for a second person. The recommendation is Susan Nielsen for her 3rd term.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve Susan Nielsen for her 3rd term on the Library Budget Committee.
Seconded.
Commissioner Schrader has moved for appointment to the Library Budget Committee. Commissioner Scholl has seconded that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Shannon, please take the poll.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right, next, Commissioner Savas wanted to discuss shelter efforts.
Yeah, so colleagues, in September or October, you may recall, I brought forth a discussion about shelters. I know staff's done a wide sweep of that, a look at that, and they're bringing back and doing a few things. And I think one of the initial motivations for me to put this forward was something similar to the Veterans Village, but not necessarily for veterans, right? It was really our second step after the Veterans Village was opened in 2018, 2019. So my concern is that that's kind of languished, and we have an opportunity to do that. We have a property that we've discussed over the years and identified, and I understand this RFI process that's about to come out, request for information, to find out there's interested parties. But it seems to me that we had great success in how this particular one was operated. We have a need out there. We have businesses, property owners that are very concerned about people that are sleeping in front of their business or sleeping on the street, and for a number of reasons, that's not right, that they really need a better shelter than we have today, or because we really don't have a shelter if you're not a veteran, per se. There are some shelters around that are privately ran or by faith-based organizations and so forth, that there's a greater need than there is capacity. So with that said, my concern or question is, are we going to take the initiative, because I don't really see that exactly what I'm looking for is going to be covered in the RFI. Are we going to take the initiative to do what Commissioner Schrader and I had previously done with the Administrator's Housing Task Force to initiate another shelter sometime soon, and I think we can do that, frankly, more timely. I don't know it's going to fit in really the framework that's being sought out thus far. That's my concern.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I see that Vahid and Rod are here. I know from my involvement early on with the local implementation plan that shelter was a part of our local implementation plan, and with the last presentation, it's my understanding that we are moving forward, and maybe Vahid or Rod could give us an update. But I think we're in line to, at least my understanding, to develop that continuum, which can include a different variety of shelter, which is what I believe the law, besides just our local implementation plan, requires us
Gary
to do.
Schmidt.
Sure, I've asked Rod and Vahid to be here, knowing this conversation would occur. Staff's doing everything you've asked us to do, Commissioners. We're not delaying any process or dragging our feet. This is part of the supportive housing services work. It's the project turnkey preparation, which you are well aware of, but please answer Commissioner's question, Vahid or Rod.
Good morning, Commissioners. Vahid Brown, Supportive Housing Services Program Manager. Commissioner Fisher, you wanted an update on kind of general progress towards shelter, is that right?
Yeah, well, it seems like you just provided one, and that this effort of providing, there's potential for pods on property, there is potential hotel motel, there's potential turnkey, there's a whole continuum of options that we're exploring and utilizing, given that we're just now receiving funds, that it's all on time. But tell us if that's correct.
Yes, so in the past year, the county has leveraged FEMA and ARPA dollars to maintain the motel shelter program. That continues. There are 85 households sheltered in that program. We have expanded the utilization of the Serenity and Haven House by adding a pipeline for referrals from the law enforcement assisted diversion program, so that's increasing shelter utilization in those programs. We're planning to issue an RFI, a request for information. Commissioner Savas referred to that. The Administrator's Task Force is meeting today to finalize that document and come up with a calendar for releasing that. We just, on Thursday last week, issued awards, letters of intent to award contracts to our most recent round of procurement for supportive housing services dollars, a procurement that we anticipate executing contracts to the value of about $6.1 million. That includes $2.5 million in anticipated shelter activities funded through that procurement. That will be that will expand our shelter capacity as well. And as mentioned, we are preparing for Project Turnkey for that to be open. We have identified a short list of properties to do further work on ahead of that application becoming open. So yes, you are right. We are moving ahead on various fronts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure maybe Commissioner Fisher understands where I'm going or what I'm trying to say here. So, Vahid, let me ask the question a little bit differently. Is there enough sheltering in the pipeline to meet the need?
I mean, no, not at the moment, right? I would say that we're on track to build a pipeline, but the things that are in the pipeline, of course, not knowing how many units will result out of turnkey or if we're successful in a turnkey application, that'll change. I think that you are absolutely correct, Commissioner, that the demand and need exceeds the capacity. This has always been the case as I've been working at the county. We're working to address that and expand our capacity. But yes, need still outstrips available resources.
Okay. We still have people that are living in their cars and living in their motorhomes or campers or living under a tarp. And some of those people are probably not, as you know, you've got experience, but some of those people are not going to go into a hotel or a Project Turnkey, correct? Right?
Yes.
So a car camping type of thing, if there's not an applicant or nothing in the pipeline, there's a need for that, right? People don't want to see them in the front of their house. Maybe there needs to be a place for that. So that's really what I'm kind of trying to get at. And so in this RFI process you're putting forth, would it be appropriate for the Board of County Commissioners to submit a request, or should we didn't need an LIP and we didn't need an RFI to do what we did to build the veteran shelter. We did it. We took the initiative. The city of Vancouver, just to our north, their population is 196,000 people. We're twice that and then some. And they're opening their second shelter.
Gary, the administrator's task force, have you finished your work on that?
Oh,
Not yet. And when do you suppose that will be finished so you can bring a report to this board?
we meet every other week. We're meeting today. Everything we do is at board's direction, and we bring it back to you for a final decision. In particular, we're working on sheltering, we're working on Project Turnkey, we're working on supportive housing services budget to make sure it's flowing smoothly and update you if it is or isn't. So those are the most three important priorities we're working on for you. As soon as we keep you posted. So it's kind of ongoing. It doesn't really end because this work will not end in a.
Well, that's the problem. I think maybe the instructions for this task force were so heavy that, and laborious, that you're being bogged down by all of the instructions that you have been given. It's just my sense on that. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, so there is a distinctive difference, though, between the wraparound services and then the actual building capacity for shelter. So most of the housing bond from Metro is going towards not transitional shelters, but actually capacity for affordable housing. So that's the gap, at least that's my understanding, is the gap that we have, is that we've got that continuum piece together. We have wraparound services, but the folks who need the wraparound services, the issue that we're dealing with up north is that that notion of shelter at least gets them there to get stabilized, where you can move them from one to the other. And so the transitional piece. And we've been, with Project Turnkey, there's been difficulty, really locating a place where we could find an appropriate spot with at least how it was initially pulled together at the legislature, that it was really buying motel hotels. And we have found, at least here, that hasn't fit so well because we're dealing with communities that, we haven't been able to, in my mind, do the level of, to convince folks that this is a good thing to happen, okay? I mean, we have shown that sheltering works, because we did the outreach to the business community and folks like that. So I guess my point is that is a gap, and you are looking at the gap as you go through the administrator's task force. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes.
Does that include looking for example, working with the home builders and looking for land again to see what might be available? Usually they want to build housing, but we could talk about transitional sheltering, I suppose.
Right. So again, we are only following the board's direction. We are not independent of what you've already asked us to
Right.
do. We're only at the staff level collaborating, interdepartmental, on implementing your direction. That's the only purpose of this group. Now, I'm going to say what is not being said. If commissioners, if you want to sit back on this group, I welcome that, but I need two of you, and I believe all of you are interested in this. So if you can decide which two of you want to sit on it, tell me, please.
Is that what the ask is?
It's not my ask,
That'd be an ask I would make. I just ask if Commissioner Schrader's interested, that she and I and the board support that. That's limited to two, so we can do our work and get going on this. I think staff would appreciate, frankly, the support and the lift and helping clearing some obstacles to make it happen. I think we need to be active and proactive in making something happen, because if we continue to languish, and I'm not blaming anyone, don't get me wrong, so I want to just thank staff for all the great work, but there's so much need out there. So there's no way we're not having enough staff to cover all the bases, to fill all the gaps. And I think we can do some of the low-hanging fruit that takes a little bit more of a political lift in some areas, and identify the gaps, and I can see 2 or 3 right now.
Well, I think you're making the assumption that if 2 commissioners show up on this task force, that magically stuff is going to happen, and that 2 commissioners are going to all of a sudden be this energetic force, that you've made the assumption that this task force is languishing. I don't see evidence that it is languishing. I think what has been the directions from this board that has been put on this task force is huge, and it's very weighted, and our staff does not want to make any mistakes in coming forward with the report. I also think that if commissioners show up at a task force that maybe our staff members are not going to be free to give their opinions on what is going to work or not's going to work, because commissioners tend to come forward with a frame of mind based on information that we think we know. We talk to 2 or 3 or 5, 10 people in the community, and those community people are pounding us, do this, do this, do this. So therefore, we bring that assumption forward that that's going to cause the problem, and we really don't have any empirical data to support that assumption. I'm guilty of it. That's why I ask. I say, hey, is this doable? Is it? Well, and then I find out a lot of times differently. We have a couple commissioners in the queue. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation a lot, and I really appreciate Commissioner Savas with the sense of urgency, because there is a sense of urgency when people are unsheltered, living in cars, living in mobile homes out in our community. So I applaud that. I applaud Commissioner Schrader going through the continuum of what was the affordable housing bond. That was to expand housing units, not shelter. I also want to emphasize that, and this is getting missed in the bigger conversation when you're hearing what's happening in the media and coming from Portland, there's this effort of diverting resources all into shelter. The homeless services measure calls for shelter. We have not had, other than the Veterans Village and our domestic violence programs, shelter. We recognize that in our local implementation plan is something that we would do with these resources, which is underway, which includes the type of pod shelter. We know what works. We know that for some individuals, having them being met where they are, like in a village type of situation or in a location, works. Expertise will show that that works. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. And what I would suggest is, like we're doing today, having this discussion, maybe we just need to have more discussions as a board so we can all weigh in and have this conversation and just make it more a part of our discourse as we're moving ahead.
Commissioner Savas is in the queue, and then I have an idea.
Sure. Well, I'm not going to say that empirical evidence is really what I'm going to put forth here, but I think that it was self-demonstrated in essence that I think it's safe to say, I feel it's safe to say that if it wasn't for both the commitment of Commissioner Schrader and I and the administrator, Don Krupp at the time, that the Veterans Village would not be in existence today without our efforts. And that was far prior than the supportive housing services. We don't need an implementation plan to implement it. There's a number of other shelters that have been put up. Again, if I brought this up in September and it's May now, it's just a matter of a few months away, and it's a year, and we're still talking about it. And we could be moving at least on shelter number 2, or a car camping one, in an area that is not going to impact neighborhoods, and we're going to whisper to each other so we're not listening. So I'll conclude my comments there. You guys can whisper.
Gary, do you have anything that's been completed on the task force that you can bring forward regarding shelters? Because I know you're looking at a lot of different housing questions. Is there any work that's done yet? I think you guys, from what I understand, are on track.
Well, I mean, Project Turnkey is a permanent shelter that we would own. I mean, that is the immediate thing we're working on because there's a deadline coming up. Commissioners, you can direct me right now today. Gary, come forward with plans for a second permanent shelter similar to the Veterans Village and give me a date. If that's what you want to do, do
So is
it.
Project Turnkey a shelter?
Yes, it's a
Okay,
permanent shelter
and
that
then
we would own.
We had,
Transitional shelter.
it's transitional shelter, yeah, whatever. And so you're moving forward on some properties that have been identified. There's many in the county. How is that different, really, than what Commissioner Savas has asked today? Because you're going to do your due diligence because you were under a time crunch to go out and try to find properties with a willing seller that would fit our criteria. Correct?
Yes.
And do you have a timeline on that, Fahid or Rod, when you think that work's going to be done?
Well, we're prepared. I think that the county has done work to be ready for when the application opens to be able to be competitive for those dollars. So I don't yet have a timeline for when the Oregon Community Foundation will open the application. I ask them every week, and they tell me, don't have any information yet.
I'm not asking for that, Vahid. I'm asking for the identification and due diligence on some of these properties. Do you think that you could do that ahead of the Oregon Community Foundation making their decision?
Yes, we are moving forward
Okay,
to do so.
that's okay. And then I assume soon that we will hear from what's going to work and what's not going to work. I'm okay with that for now. I really am. I think that is a big, big lift for us. It's a big step in moving forward on sheltering.
Well, I think it's the biggest piece, excuse me for interrupting.
No, go
Chair.
ahead.
I think it's the biggest piece that's missing right now, because I can understand the angst in Portland. People were told things were going to happen more quickly. We all knew that those dollars were going to come in more slowly than we thought for supported services. We all knew it was a big issue we had to deal with borrowing, but let's not revisit that. That was then. This is now the dollars are coming in and we're moving ahead. But the angst there, particularly from some of those the big business folks, is that it's not moving fast enough. And it's not because they're heartless. They just don't understand why we can't move people into something that's more, okay, temporary, all right, but get them at least stabilized physically, I guess. Yes, wraparound services, but right now, I think their angst is, we are doing contracts with our advocacy groups who do those wraparound services, but there's no real there. I'm just trying to understand their perspective about where these folks are going to land, where you can even identify how you can move them from one place to another. Do you see what I mean? That's where the angst is.
Yeah,
It's not
I
not an either or, but it's like, they're just like, well, where are these shelters? Where are we going to move them? How are we even going to find folks to give?
We
yeah.
understand the community narrative, but
Yeah.
this board has moved with purpose for the last year and a half,
Yeah.
2 years. And so that's our overall direction. And we still feel like we're moving with purpose. And so we're not responding to the new community angst on what's happening in
Yeah.
Portland and what's not
That's a-
happening in Portland.
We can't.
We think
can't
we have
do
a
that.
solid program. We waited for the funds to flow. The funds are flowing now. We're moving forward with hiring. We're moving forward with engaging our community, our providers. There are multiple potential partners who are identifying locations, identifying models to build some villages or those type of things. All those people are being engaged, and that's the work the staff is doing. So I think, we believe we're still moving with purpose, and that's the true intent of the board, and that's how we've been moving forward.
Yeah.
So all the support we can get, absolutely, from board members. In our next phase, we're going to be asking board members to help us talk to mayors, and to cities, and help with that part of it when we start looking for places to land some of these facilities. So we think we're right there with you and doing what you need us to do. So that's my view of it at this point.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, and Rod, I know you guys are doing everything you can. You know, you're trying to hire up. My issue, again, I have full faith, but you're also not in the, typically not in the business or experience base, or have the machinery, if you will, to start standing up facilities, right? I mean, acquiring a hotel, for example, if we acquire a hotel that we're already occupying today with funding for shelter, it really doesn't add any capacity, for example, let's just say. But that fits one type of need. The other needs, I think, are the areas where I'm concerned that there's no one going to step forward. And I don't know how. I'd love to see the RFI. I don't know if it's explicit that all the foreseeable gaps are in the RFI, right, and are covered. And if person A doesn't know that there's a piece of property over here, then maybe that application is going to come together. I think that bringing those resources together, and that's what the Administrator's Task Force did. It brought cross-disciplinary, multiple departments so we could all help one another, and we all benefited from that. So to put it all on, and I said this before, when Mr. Swift was the director, I said, we can't put all the burden on H3S or HAC to do all this. They need extra help. So it's really a matter of bringing the resources together to make it all happen. And that's otherwise, again, I'll go back to saying, I feel it's safe to say that the Veterans Village would not have happened had we not done that.
So can we bring this back at some point, Gary? I don't think we're prepared to, it's a good conversation, but I'd like to talk to my colleagues if that might be possible about that.
I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with that.
I
We
think
can
it
always
will.
discuss it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right,
Let
so
me just-
not seeing a consensus right now. I'm going to, Gary, what's next?
A final item today is Commissioner Communications.
Yes, that's what I thought. Who wants to speak first today?
I'll go first.
Okay, Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Thursday morning, I attended the debate between Catherine Harrington and Beach Pace for the Washington County Chair position. It was very interesting. About 120 attendees were there, and a majority of those people were from business. And I bring this up this morning because the one thing I walked away with was the fact that Clackamas County is in competition with Washington County for business and vice versa. We need to do everything we can to attract new business to this county. And I know we're working on that, but it cannot be, we cannot fail to see the importance of this fact. Our future depends on our ability to attract new business. And that means taking business that might be looking at going to Washington County to come here to this county. This morning I gave testimony to the Metro Council on the solid waste issue. I can give you a copy of that testimony, but basically it was about the need for greater public engagement and details and coordination on fees. And I'd like to say thank you to the Milwaukee Community Center for the Great Spaghetti Dinner. They're doing a fundraising for Meals on Wheels. And every time I go to the Milwaukee Community Center, what great people, what a great attitude. And there's something there for everybody. So people who haven't been there yet, I encourage you to stop by and see what is of interest to you at that community center. Thanks again to everybody who works at the center for the great job you're doing for the county.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, not a lot to add, but I also went to see what was happening out at Milwaukee Center and was pretty great. They did a drive-through, get your dinners this time, and it was in the middle of this massive hailstorm. And so fortunately, there were tents outside, and the Charity League, I think it's National Charity League, had mothers and daughters inside the Milwaukee Center serving making up the plates that went to the bags to be picked up by the people. And there was lines of cars, and there was a raffle, and got to meet the board members. It was, that's community. That's what we do here in Clackamas County.
Very good.
Yeah, and I know we all, or not all of us, most of us, did we all attend the Volunteers in Medicine
Yeah.
event? That was wonderful as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention
Yeah,
that.
you go right ahead.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just was going to mention that too, Volunteers in Medicine. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I'm serving right now on the Grand Ronde Community Fund, and we just reviewed. We haven't gotten together now for the new round of grants that are coming through and to make it public, but we just did review all the needs from the whole region. And let me just say, there are a lot of needs out there. And so we will, as a group, Chip Lazenby is the chair of the group, great guy, I've known him for a long, long time. And what it does to all over the state, quite frankly, funnels dollars to community and advocacy groups, and it's a pretty rigorous process. So I'm really grateful to be on that board and grateful to have the opportunity to work with and we're going to see the Grand Ronde tomorrow.
Right.
I just want to thank Commissioner Schull for bringing that forward. Yes, economic development, it's retention, expansion, and then recruitment. And, you know, we've really focused on retention and expansion, which is important. But the recruitment piece is a part of what is part of that whole landscape, and that, again, we need to be looking at employment lands and what is available and what the needs of the businesses are so we can get them here to this county.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I just want to kind of echo what Commissioner Schrader and Schull had mentioned in regard to retention. I guess I look at it as, I want to add to Commissioner Schull's comments. I think that a lot of it for the businesses I'm talking about on the prior subject really is about people with the mental health issues or homeless issues that are impeding or disrupting business activity, whether that's in the industrial area or the commercial activity. So same goes with our neighborhoods and our communities. You know, there needs to be a place to retain not only our businesses and the employees that are employed there, but also the citizens of this county who love this county, who love this state, who want to stay here, but they're really concerned about what's coming into the county today, and that need needs to be addressed. So that's my concern. I've been at this a long time. Again, it's just a shame that we can't move a little bit quicker. I too attended the Volunteers in Medicine, great group, great effort. Huge need for offering medical services to those who don't have insurance. So, my hat's off to all of them for the services they provide and their commitment to that. So now I'll conclude my comments there.
Thank you, Commissioner Schull and Savas on that. Volunteers in Medicine was sold-out crowd last Friday for their luncheon at 250 people. They had a huge auction, a silent auction, and I noticed, Commissioner Schrader, you donated a meal to cook for 10 people, an Italian dinner.
Oh, yeah.
If you would like my assistance, I would be more than happy to put on an apron and I can clear the tables and wash the dishes. I'm not going to pretend that I can cook like you do, however. So I have a lot of experience that I used to own an inn, and so I can do that for you. It was just really a heartfelt luncheon, and they have about $400,000 left to raise to get the final push over, but they are starting with a new construction contractor. They had a little bit of a delay, but I am just very, very excited about this particular project, and I was glad to be part of the community who supported it.
Yeah.
Hearing no other business before the commission, we are adjourned. Thank you, commissioners.
Yay.